Hello students, today from this video we are going to start chapter number 3rd, that is motion in a straight line, or I should say that basically we are starting mechanics, that is a branch of physics that deals with the condition of rest or motion of a material object around us. So we are dealing with mechanics now, and this branch mechanics is further subdivided into three categories. Now these three categories are statics, kinematics, and the third one is dynamics. So as the name suggests, in statics we study the objects at rest or in equilibrium. In statics we study about those objects which are at rest or those which are in equilibrium. In kinematics we study about the motion of objects without considering the cause of that motion. So हम motion study करते हैं objects का, but we don't study the factors because of those that motion is occurring. So in kinematics we study motion of objects without considering their cause. The last one, that is dynamics. So in dynamics we also study motion of objects, but this time we are going to consider their cause also. So we study motion of objects in dynamics along with their cause. We also study about the cause of motion in dynamics, while we only study about the motion in kinematics without considering its cause. So this mechanics is divided into three main categories, and we are now dealing with kinematics. Motion in a straight line is a chapter that comes under the category of kinematics, means we will be studying the motion in a straight line of objects without considering their cause. So since we are going to deal with motion, the first term that we should know is what is motion. And when we are talking about motion, to talk about rest is equally significant. So the first thing that we are going to study is rest and motion. So we are going to study what is rest, what is motion, what do you mean by rest and motion of an object. So in very simple words, I can define rest as a body will be in rest if its position doesn't change with respect to its surroundings in the given duration of time, or with the passage of time, then the body is said to be at rest. बॉडी रेस्ट पर कब होगी या स्टेशनरी कब होगी या रुकी हुई कब होगी, इट डिपेंड्स ऑन द फैक्टर दैट इट्स पोजिशन डजंट चेंज with respect to its surroundings with the passage of time. So we can define rest as a body is said to be at rest if its position doesn't change with respect to its surroundings with the passage of time, then the object is said to be in rest. Similarly, we can define motion. So motion क्या होगा, where a body is said to be in motion if its position changes with time with respect to its surrounding, just opposite of the rest, then the body is said to be in motion. So we can define motion as a body is said to be in motion if it changes its position with respect to its surroundings with the passage of time. टाइम के साथ साथ अगर उसकी पोजीशन चेंज होती है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इट्स सराउंडिंग्स देन दैट बॉडी इज सेड टू बी इन motion, and if its position doesn't change with its surrounding with time, then it is said to be in rest. So these are the terms rest and motion. To understand kinematics, these two terms should be very clear in our mind कि body rest पर कब होगी और object motion में कब होगी. So a same object, for example a book lying on a table, can be at rest for some person while can be in motion for some other observer. सो इट बेसिकली डिपेंड्स कि सराउंडिंग के साथ ऑब्जेक्ट का पोजीशन चेंज हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. दैट मैटर्स फॉर एवरी डिफरेंट ऑब्जर्वर. a same object can be sometimes at rest or can be sometime are in motion. Now to explain rest and motion more clearly, there are two statements that we should know. First is rest and motion are relative terms, and the second is absolute rest and motion never exist. So these two statements completely explain the terms rest and motion. How can we explain these statements? Let's see. So first I am going to explain the first statement from an example. Suppose there is a car traveling at a speed of 60 km per hour and two passengers are there inside the car, while a person is observing that car from outside, standing at the corner of the road, and he is observing that car moving with a speed of 60 km per hour and two passengers are traveling in that car. So a person that is inside the car is at rest with respect to his fellow passenger. अगर हम दोनों पैसेंजर्स की बात करें, सो दोज टू पैसेंजर्स आर इन स्टेट ऑफ रेस्ट with respect to each other. While if we talk about the observer that is outside the car and observing that car, for that person, for that outsider, for that outside observer, the persons sitting inside the car are in motion. So the same person that is in rest with respect to his fellow passenger is in motion with respect to an observer outside the car. So that's what we mean when we say that rest and motion are relative terms. An object that is at rest with respect to some observer can be in motion with respect to some other observer. अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्ट A है जो ऑब्जर्वर O के रिस्पेक्ट में रेस्ट पर है, then it is possible there is some other observer O dash जिसके रिस्पेक्ट में same object A can be in motion. So rest and motion are relative terms. It depends on both observer and object. We can't simply say that this object is in rest or this object is in motion. That statement is incomplete. We have to mention that this object is at rest with respect to observer O, or this object is in motion with respect to object O dash. So basically we have to give a reference point, a frame of reference in which we are talking about rest and motion. That is the first statement, that rest and motion are relative term. Now move to the second one. Absolute rest and motion never exist. How can we explain it? So the position of an object is changing with time or not. This can be explained only if we take a point that is absolutely fixed in space. So we need a absolutely fixed point in space as a reference point to explain whether this particular object is changing its state or not with respect to time. But when we try to find such absolutely fixed reference point, there is no such point in the universe, as every object in the universe is moving. Earth is moving about the sun, and our entire solar system travel through the galaxy, that is the Milky Way galaxy, and the cluster of galaxies also move with respect to other clusters. So there is no object in the universe that is in a state of absolute rest. So we can't find any absolute fixed point to explain the state of the object that we are observing. Since there is no object in the universe at absolute rest, so absolute motion can also be realized. जब कोई ऑब्जेक्ट ही नहीं है जो बिल्कुल फिक्स है, जिसके रिस्पेक्ट में हम मोशन या रेस्ट को स्टडी कर सकते हैं, देयर इज़ नो एब्सोल्यूट रेस्ट एंड देयर इज़ नो एब्सोल्यूट मोशन in the universe. So only whenever we talk about rest or motion, there exists relative rest and relative motion. There is no absolute rest, no absolute motion. Rest and motion are relative terms, and it depends on the observer as well as the object. Both, दोनों पे डिपेंड करेगा कि whether the object is at rest or in motion. There is no such thing like absolute rest and absolute motion. So this was about rest and motion, but after this I want to add a point here. Most of the time we use the term point object. We will be using it throughout the chapter, so it should be clear that what is point object. Any object that is changing its position in terms of distances which are much greater than its own size in a particular duration of time, then such object can be said as a point object. So point object doesn't mean that it should be very small in size, but it is a comparable vision. जो साइज होगा ऑब्जेक्ट का, वो जो डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल कर रहा है उसके कंपैरिजन में बहुत छोटा होना चाहिए, देन वी कैन कॉल देम एज a point object. For example, if a car is traveling a distance of 2000 km, then it can be considered as a point object in that case. Similarly, Earth is quite large, but when we talk about our whole solar system, the distances traveled by the Earth are very large in comparison to its size. So there we can consider Earth as a point object also. So point object is when the position of an object changes by some distance which is much greater than its own size, then that object can be regarded as a point object, right? So we can write the definition of point object as if the position of an object changes by distances much greater than its own size in a reasonable duration of time, then such objects are called point object. So this is the point object. Now in this in this chapter we will be studying about motion in a straight line, but actually there are three kinds of possible motion, that is motion in one dimension, in two dimension, and in three dimension. The difference is that when you are traveling in a straight line, it is a one dimension motion. You only need one coordinate out of three to specify the position of an object and to specify the distances traveled by that object. While if we talk about the motion in 2D, that is the two dimension, in which there exists a plane and we need two coordinates out of three to explain the position change with time. Position change को explain करने के लिए we need two coordinates, then it is called motion in two dimension or motion in a plane. While Similarly, in three-dimensional motion, we need three coordinates to specify the change in position or the distance traveled in a particular time by the object. So in chapter number 3rd, that is a motion in a straight line, we will be only talking about the motion in one dimension. It is also called linear motion or rectilinear motion, and here we only need one coordinate out of the three to specify the position of the object changes with time. So जो भी changes है position में उसको specify करने के लिए one coordinate will be enough out of the given three coordinates. So that's all about the one dimensional motion, and from the next video we will be starting our first topic from this chapter, that is distance and displacement. So for that, stay tuned and keep studying. Thank you.